Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Flaming Coq Podcast. I'm your host Hayden Morris. Thanks for tuning in. Tried to get some better audio. Hopefully the camera stays in focus tonight. But let's get on with the show. First part of business is last week Kamaru Usman got an easy decision, coasted his way to a decision over Damian Maia in Brazil. I got most of my prediction right. I said Usman would win, but I thought Usman would put on the pressure just a little bit more and go for a stoppage, but c'est la vie. Maia said that he still wants to fight out for the rest of his contract, and don't know what's next for Usman. Possibly a showdown with Colby Covington. They've had a lot of back and forth apparently. Anyway, also from the other week, Mackenzie Dern, who missed weight, she's now in the top 15 UFC rankings, despite the fact that she didn't weigh in at 215. She came in 7 pounds heavier. She also fought an unranked opponent who was, I think, making her UFC debut as well. But just goes to show, just like Conor McGregor going up above Khabib Nurmagomedov in the rankings, despite the fact he hasn't fought in, what's this, nearly the third year. Despite that, it's just UFC rankings, sort of garbage, you got to admit. Bad news over at Bellator. Mirko Cro Cop, the UFC veteran, K1 champ, the Pride Grand Prix champ, he's pulled out of his rematch fight with Roy Nelson at Bellator 200. He, I think it's a knee injury. It's undisclosed at the moment. All week they've been scrambling to find a new opponent for Big Country, but so far nothing's come about. So what was the co-main event, Rafael Carvalho defending his middleweight title against Gegard Mousasi, is now the main event, which we'll get into that a bit later and do a quick breakdown. In boxing, Tyson Fury has announced he's having his comeback fight on June the 9th. He is taking on Safari. It's okay, no one else knew his name until this week either. Safari is an Albanian boxer, holds a record of 23 wins and 1 loss, with 21 knockouts. He's currently ranked number 64th in the world at cruiserweight. The one loss on his record is his one fight that I know of at heavyweight, having a look at boxrec.com, but is coming up from cruiserweight to fight at heavyweight against arguably the best in the world. Twitter was had a couple of excellent quotes here, like I don't know who said it, but he said of Safari, he's that unknown, he's named himself twice. Someone else commented a 5'11" cruiserweight going up against a 6'9" heavyweight. But speaking of Tyson Fury fighting cruiserweights, Tony Bellew came out after the David Haye fight, the second David Haye fight, and said he'd put his hand up to fight Fury in his return, but Tyson Fury said no, he's too small, he's a cruiserweight, and I quote, I would hurt him properly. And Tony said of this announcement of Fury fighting Safari, or however you pronounce it, it doesn't really matter. They left his name to the last minute after tickets went on sale because no one would have bought them otherwise. But Tony Bellew, he said, this is fucking ridiculous. Said he wouldn't fight a cruiserweight. Next thing you know, fighting a cruiserweight. Shannon Briggs also said that Fury is ducking him because they've had a lot of back and forth on Instagram and Twitter, and apparently they were trying to get that fight made. But Shannon the Cannon says that Fury's ducking him and that he's going to go and crash the weigh-ins, which, you know, if you've seen what he did with Klitschko, always fun. Back over to MMA, a California State Athletic Commission Executive Director, Andy Foster, has said, if Chuck Liddell passes all of his medicals, I will administratively grant him a license. Chuck hasn't fought since 2010, a big knockout loss to Rich Franklin. And, you know, there's been a lot of talk lately. I covered it a lot on my last show. Him possibly coming back to fight Tito Ortiz, how he wants to fight John Jones. And Andy Foster, he gave a pretty comprehensive list of all the tests that Chuck would have to pass. He'd have to do an angiogram of his brain, MRI, EKGs, cardiac tests, blood work, a vision test, neurocognitive testing, and if he passes all that, he'll get a license to fight. But to be given the ability to compete would definitely depend on his opponent, who they choose. And Executive Director Andy Foster didn't want to give away anything, didn't want to say who the potential opponent may be. But not speaking of his potential opponent, Tito Ortiz has came out recently saying he never got a fair shake in the UFC, especially against Chuck Liddell, which doesn't really make sense when you consider that Big John McCarthy is the referee, the most down the line referee that there is in MMA. There was no judges involved at all because Liddell knocked him out twice. So, it's Tito. He might actually believe this stuff. Ortiz also said that Tito versus Liddell 3 would be the hugest fight ever, and that they would go on a world tour where they would talk smack and promote the fight, because I think someone had just explained to him what a world tour would mean for them. But the hugest fight ever, I doubt it. I mean, two 40-year-old guys way past their prime with not a lot riding on it, knowing that Chuck's already beat him twice. The hugest. I can't get over that. He's raising children, is Tito, and that worries me. That just worries me. Anyway, moving on. Ian McCall has called it a career and retired following his 9-second knockout loss to Kyoji Horiguchi. McCall, who's 33 now, he's fought for nearly 16 years. Former Tachi Palace flyweight champ, and his last win was against Brad Pickett in 2014, and has since been on a 3-fight skid. Probably for the best. He hasn't looked his best. He's had something like since 2014, 2013, he's had about 7 fights that have had to be cancelled due to his own injuries and opponents pulling out. But I think it was like a 70-30 split, 70% being him pulling out due to injury. But he leaves the sport. He said he gave the sport a lot. The sport took a lot from him. And his final record is 13 wins, 7 losses and 1 draw. But probably for the best. Call it a career after his last couple of outings. Luke Rockhold, who has been in the news lately for challenging Alexander Gustafsson, the UFC light heavyweight #1 contender. Luke Rockhold's been calling him out for a little while, and which it was interesting. Rockhold coming up from middleweight to fight at light heavyweight, because let's say that Rockhold moves on up, he's coming off a knockout loss to Yoel Romero. He moves on up, he fights Gustafsson. Well, if Gustafsson wins, he gets a title shot. He already could probably argue his way into a title shot right now. But let's say that Rockhold wins, beats him, knocks him out, chokes him, does something impressive to get himself a shot at the UFC light heavyweight title. The man holding the strap, regardless of win or lose his next fight, is Daniel Cormier, Rockhold's training partner. So that'd be goddamn interesting, wouldn't it? That creates a little drama, creates a backstory. You're tuning in to watch that one. Bad news, it's not going to happen. Luke Rockhold's injured his knee. Go to Twitter or his Instagram, and you can watch the video of him getting his stitches put in. But that fight's not going to happen, which is great. Anyway, more bad news for fighters. Curtis Blades, Alistair Overeem, at UFC 225. It's still on, don't worry, I'm not going there. But it's now on the prelims. It's been bumped from the main card down to the prelims. When asked for a response from both fighters, Curtis Blades said, "We're still getting paid." Which is good, that's a good, simple answer. Doesn't matter. Still getting paid. And Overeem said, "I have no problem with the decision. It just means that now the people in Europe, they don't have to stay up as late to watch it." So, the silver lining, both of them, it's real good. But the real kicker for both these guys, CM Punk is still on the main card. That's it's a good thing they've dedicated their whole life to that, while CM Punk main card. That's not a knock on CM Punk. CM Punk said that he'd rather be on Fight Pass or, whatever prelim card you can get him on. But, excuse me, good job. Thug Rose Namajunas has set terms for a potential trilogy fight with Joanna Not Champion. At the moment, Thug Rose has said she's not interested in the fight, wants to see how Joanna goes against another opponent. Joanna, of course, is fighting on July 28th against Tisha Torres. And Thug Rose said, see how she does against someone else, or the alternate that Joanna could take is just to admit publicly that Thug Rose is the best. Thug Rose says that Joanna already knows privately and in her own head that she's the best, so she just got to come out and say it publicly now, and she'll get a title shot. I have to agree that right now Thug Rose is the best in her weight class in the world, because she holds the title. There's no arguing. Plus she's already beat Joanna handedly twice, so I reckon let's pump some new blood into that division. Fabricio Verdum, we'll move on now. Fabricio Verdum has been flagged by USADA for a violation. Apparently an out of competition drug test has come back hot. It was they took the test about a month after his knockout loss to Alexander Volkov recently. Big Fab says it's just a misunderstanding. And wants to get it all cleared up. He believes in a clean sport, which they always say that, don't they? And then a lot of guys talk about Jesus. But every single guy that gets caught is like, no, I didn't do that. I believe in a clean sport. But I don't know about Big Fab. Hopefully it's a mistake. He says he's very conscious about what he's putting into his body, what he's taking, his supplements and all that. Again, it's just a misunderstanding, apparently. I haven't heard anything else since I read that. Other than he was supposed to fight Alexei Oleinik on September 15, which is the UFC's first show in Russia. But that's probably not happening now. But on the bright side of all this, you want a silver lining. That little pissant Colby Covington has come out. He was the first on it, calling him a filthy animal and a cheating scumbag, and said he wasn't surprised that Big Fab was on the juice. Which, after those harsh words were said, Colby Covington's lawyer is probably going to get involved and sue Big Fab. Moving on, the Bare Knuckle Fight Club has announced their first referee. I can't remember the date of their fight, but the first sanctioned bare knuckle boxing match in the United States since 1889, if I'm remembering that correctly. They've got their referee for the event, or at least some of the fights, I guess. Big Dan Murgliata, famous MMA referee. I think he's a very solid, down the middle kind of a guy. He usually does a good job. I say usually because straight away springs to mind is while going over the final instructions with Brock Lesnar and Heath Herring for their fight, he brought them both in and stuck Heath Herring in the eye just before the fight. He didn't mean it, but then soon after, Brock Lesnar shattered Heath Herring's orbital bone with a punch. I'm not saying the two are related, but what do I know? And Big Dan also let Shane Carwin just beat the fuck out of an unconscious Frank Mir to win the UFC interim heavyweight title. And that's two pretty big mistakes at heavyweight in the UFC that Big Dan, every referee stuffs up sometimes, sure. The thing is, these guys are going to be fighting bare knuckle and there's like a 12-man heavyweight tournament or something. I sort of hope he makes a couple of little mistakes, Dude's rocked, should get a stand 8 count. He's like, nah, it's a slip, send him back in there. Hopefully he does it to Bobby Gunn, if anybody. I mean, why not? Bring up Bobby Gunn. Speaking of shitheads, Tyron Woodley has come out. He's not the shithead, but Tyron Woodley, he's sort of a shithead. Sorry. Tyron Woodley has come out and said that he's going to be training Floyd Mayweather. See, there's the main shithead in this story. But Tyron Woodley said that he's going to be training Floyd Mayweather in MMA. Money Mayweather's on a vacation right now. He's going around Singapore, Japan, I think the United Arab Emirates, and a few other places. And he's been on tour. He's just coming back from the Badu Jack Adonis Stevenson fight. He went up there with Jack. And Woodley said, we're going to start training when he gets back. Woodley said all this on an Instagram live feed. But Mayweather's also said pretty recently that he'd only come back for $1 billion, but probably not in boxing. Says he's done in boxing, but they're probably just working in a gym together, or something. I thought I'd bring this up as my last bit of news. Biggest names, world champions, all that, but I don't think anything's going to come of it. Anyway, let's get into our first breakdown. We've got a couple of great fights coming up this weekend. Bellator 200, I'm not going to go too deep into that. And also UFC's got a fight night on, in which Stephen Wonderboy Thompson will be taking on undefeated English fighter Darren Till. Excuse me. So I think we'll get that one done first. Then we've got Rafael Cordero over in Bellator defending his middleweight title against Gegard Mousasi, and a fight I'm really looking forward to in Michael Venom Page versus the caveman Dave Rickles. So let's get it started. Wonderboy Thompson holds a record of 14 wins, 2 losses and 1 draw, and he's coming off a decision win over Jorge Masvidal. Darren Till, 16 wins, no losses, 1 draw. And his last fight was a TKO win over Donald Cowboy Cerrone, which was a great fight. Just the stats real quick, the tail of the tape. Wonderboy is 6 feet, 170 pounds, 75-inch reach, and 35 years old. Darren Till, 6 foot, 170 pounds, 74-inch reach, and 24 years old. Wonderboy fights out of Upstate Karate, and Darren Till from Team Kaobon over in the UK. Both guys are... Darren Till's a southpaw. Wonderboy Thompson, he likes to switch and use his karate style. Darren Till, Muay Thai guy, so we're probably looking at a good stand-up fight here. Wonderboy, of course, has a black belt, Kempo karate, and with his karate skills, he's been a 5-time world kickboxing champion. Darren Till, Muay Thai kind of a guy. He's got a Lucha Libre purple belt, which is sort of like the rival of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Anyway, Darren Till, former K1 European champ. We'll start with the pluses to Wonderboy's game. He's got great feints, great footwork. He's really good with keeping range, keeping guys at distance for making them fight his fight. Picks his shots real well. His wrestling's improved, which he was working on that when he was fighting Woodley. He's pretty good in the clinch, and the best way I'd describe the way he fights, the way he stands, his movement, I'd say he fights like a cobra. Someone else said that to me, and I got to agree. I thought that was the best way to say how Wonderboy fights. Darren Till, on the other hand, KO power, also has good feints and good footwork. Really accurate with that left hand. He likes to come forward off of his counters. Excuse me. Great tie kicks, great elbows, great knees. Likes to work the body. He's very strong in the clinch, and he's an underrated grappler. He's not great. He's not going to be winning a lot of jiu-jitsu competitions, but he's still very strong on the ground. But I think this is going to be a stand-up fight. Excuse me. Darren Till predicts a knockout win in round 2. It's a real interesting fight. I'm hoping to catch it, but it's going to be a good stand-up fight. I think if Wonderboy can make Till fight his fight, keep him at range, he's going to take the win. Darren Till though needs to get on the inside, but even Woodley had trouble with that, and Woodley's whole thing is wrestling. I noticed that Wonderboy is coming in as the underdog. Darren Till's the favourite coming in, but I got to give it to Thompson. I reckon he TKOs him in the second or third round, somewhere in the middle. And hopefully, because I'm going to wager a few dollars on that one. But my money says Wonderboy Thompson. Moving on now. The next fight over at Bellator 200. I'm not sure if it's the co-main event or not. But Michael Venom Page will be making his return to Bellator to take on David the Caveman Rickles. And Rickles will be making history here, I think, with the most fights in Bellator. Or something, I don't know. I read a headline that Rickles been around a long time in Bellator. Might be most wins if he gets it, or most fights, I'm not sure. But anyway, let's get into it. We'll start with Michael Venom Page, who's coming off a pro boxing debut, which I don't know if you saw it, but yeah, he knocked that dude. I don't even learn that guy's name. Doesn't matter. He's a footnote in history. If you haven't seen it, go watch Venom Page knock out his poor boxing opponent, and then watch him versus goddamn Cyborg Santos, because that was fucking brutal. But anyway, Michael Venom Page holds a record of 12 wins and no losses. His last fight was a decision over Fernando Gonzalez. David Rickles, 19 wins, 4 losses, no draws and 1 no contest. And his last fight was a decision over Adam Piccolotti. Quick rundown of the tail of the tape. Venom Page, 6'3", 170 pounds, 77-inch reach, and 31 years old. David Rickles, 6 foot, 170 pounds, couldn't find his reach, and 29 years old. Venom Page is coming in his karate style, probably his karate stance. He's an orthodox fighter, is what they got him listed as, but he switches. His stance is with the wind. David Rickles is a bit more of a kickboxer, more of a brawler. You know, he's an MMA fighter. He looks like an MMA fighter. He fights like an MMA fighter. Venom Page also has. I was going to make a list, but it was too damn long, of all the medals he's won in karate, in the World Karate, light contact, full contact, all that. Go watch highlight reels of that man. He is a human highlight reel. He's creative. His feints, his footwork. I said it again. Footsworks. He picks his shots real well. He's got a very unorthodox style. And there are 12 men that can attest to how dangerous he is inside MMA. He's also got a kickboxing record, undefeated boxing record. He's big, he's long, he's tall, creative as hell. David Rickles, on the other hand, I don't think he brings a lot to the table. He's not a real creative striker. He's not known for any one particular facet. He is a Bellator Season 8 lightweight tournament winner. Back when they did tournaments in Bellator, he won Season 8, got to fight Michael Chandler, lost it for the title fight. But he's a real blood and guts kind of guy. He comes to fight every single time. He brawls forward. He ain't afraid of blood. He's exciting to watch. He's got knockout power. It's definitely going to be a fun fight. I don't have a lot written down for this one, but I got to say, I'm really looking forward to this fight. I think it's going to be full of action. Rickles going to come forward, just keep moving forward. Venom Page is going to be doing his trademark hands by his knees, jumping around. And I've got to say that Venom Page stops him probably in the second or third. You could definitely catch him clean, take him out in the first round. But I'd like to think that we get a little bit more bang for our buck in this one. And we get at least 2 rounds. Or at least a round and a half, rather. But, yeah, if I could, I'd put my money on Venom Page. But Crown Bet didn't have it there, which was unfortunate. Anyway, in the main event, Rafael Carvalho will be defending his middleweight title against Gegard Mousasi. So let's get into that. Carvalho, 15-1 record, coming off a knockout win over Alessio Sakara. Took him about 40 seconds. Gegard Mousasi is coming off holds a record of 43 wins, 6 losses, and 2 draws. Excuse me. And he's coming off a decision win over Alexander Shlemenko, the long-time middleweight champion at Bellator. Tail of the tape. Rafael, 6'3", 185 pounds, 78-inch reach, and 31 years old. Mousasi is 6'2", 185, 76-inch reach, and 32 years old. Rafael, Muay Thai guy, southpaw, fighting out of Brazil. Mousasi, orthodox kickboxer, you could say. Currently training in the Netherlands with team Eurojin or Euroyin. It might be a soft J. Anyway, we'll start with the challenger. It's Gegard. He's a former Dream champion and Strikeforce champion. Has amateur boxing championships to his name. He's a judo black belt. 30 first round finishes. Is good at maintaining distance. Great shot selection. Is very precise. Has a great jab. He has good wrestling. I think it goes underappreciated. It's the underappreciated facet of his game. But his top game is real good with striking up there, keeping position, holding people down, and he's real crafty on the ground. And he's been around a while. I think the only knock that I have on Gegard Mousasi is a stupid nickname in the Dreamcatcher. Why ever the hell you picked that one, I don't know. Anyway, on the other side of the cage, you've got Rafael Carvalho, whose nickname is Blessed, or the Blessed One or something. It's a good nickname, it's nothing. He's no Max Holloway though, is he? But he is a Bellator champion. He's currently riding a 15-fight win streak with 12 knockouts and 6 first-round stoppages. He has lost one fight in his career, and that was his first fight, and since then he's been very dangerous. So the guy who beat him first, thank you. On behalf of all middleweights in Bellator, thank you. Anyway, Carvalho, very strong inside the clinch, very, very dangerous with his knees, his elbows, has good feints and good footwork, knockout power. He does pick his shots well. I've watched a couple of highlight videos recently, and I thought he throws a lot of wild hooks, but his shot selection was still on point. And he switches his stance from southpaw to orthodox mid combo. He does that very well. In great variety of kicks he likes to use, and he's decent on the ground. He's not. I think Gegard's probably better on the ground, but he does have a very dangerous guard, so I'll give him that. But I got to say, I noticed that he throws a lot of hooks, and they're very wide, very wild, brawling style hooks. But yeah, and Gegard being a former boxer, I reckon he'll take advantage of that. Just pepper him on the inside, and probably stop him in the middle rounds, the third or the fourth probably. Is my prediction. Gegard Mousasi takes him out. You know, it should be a great fight though, and I really like that you get all these top level guys from the UFC, like Benson Henderson, Rory Mack, and Mousasi, to the first three to come to my mind. And they don't just have immediate success in Bellator, like Benson Henderson or Benny and Hedges. He goes over there, and I'm pretty sure Michael Chandler just blitzed him. Welterweight champion blitzes him, and it's good to know that there's some real competition over there in Bellator. I was worried, that they'd go over there and they'd just take out these top guys and just sit as kings for the remainder of their career. But even though Bellator is a distant second to the UFC, at least the competition in Bellator, they're legit, and it's good to see. And it's good to know that UFC isn't monopolising on the whole sport of MMA. But that's my pick, is Gegard Mousasi stops Rafael in the middle rounds. Put your money on Michael Venom Page, or not, just watch him. It's going to be a great fight no matter what happens. And I reckon Stephen Wonderboy Thompson stops Darren Till. Anyway, for the last part of this episode, next week here in Australia, it's Reconciliation Week, so we probably won't be doing a show. I'll be too busy at work. But so I thought I'd just have a look at, for this show, I'd have a look at some past boxers, current boxers as well, that of Aboriginal heritage, that some that paved the way for other Indigenous sportsmen, and I just thought I'd make a list, and to show you the contribution that Indigenous Australians have had on boxing, and our one famous MMA guy. But let's get this guy out of the way, because the one man that brings both Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians together is Anthony Mundine. Because I've never met anybody that is a fan, that likes him. Everyone I've met has said that Anthony Mundine is a piece of shit that needs to shut up. And it's good that he can have that sort of power to bring everyone together. But, you can't knock his contributions to boxing. He's a two-time WBA super middleweight champion and a former IBO middleweight champion. He's been involved in a couple of the biggest fights for Australian boxing, most notably with his rivalry with Danny Green. And the next bloke on my list is Daniel Gill, the former IBF, WBA, IBO middleweight champion, and Commonwealth Games gold medalist at welterweight. Him and Mundine, they've swapped wins against each other, and I think that they're the first two Indigenous fighters to fight for a world title where both fighters were Indigenous, if that makes sense. And I think that's pretty impressive. If I'm wrong, leave a comment. I'd like to know. I couldn't find anything on Google, but I'm reading a book right now that I'll leave here, so you can read the spine of it. But Anthony Mundine once said that he wouldn't fight a bloke trained by Jeff Fennick. I can't remember his name. He said because he's my Muslim brother. But then Daniel Gill, his Indigenous brother, he'll fight. So he's sort of a piece of shit for doing that. I mean, he's a piece of shit anyway, but how dare you race traitor. But anyway, that's not what Reconciliation Week's about. But I found that highly offensive. But let's move on anyway. Tony Mundine, Anthony Mundine's dad, he was a great boxer. He was Australian middleweight, light heavyweight, cruiserweight and heavyweight champ. Also the Commonwealth middleweight and light heavyweight champ. And he fought Carlos Monzon back in the day for the world title. No one was beating Monzon at that time, but I've heard a few stories saying that if Monzon wasn't the champ, Tony Mundine could have beat anybody else and been world champion. The next on my list are Glenn and Kevin Kelly. Glenn Kelly, they're two brothers, and Glenn Kelly, the highest point of his career was losing to Roy Jones Jr. In a bout for the, going to go through the alphabet here, WBC, WBA, IBF, IBO, WBF and IBA light heavyweight title. And his brother, Kevin Kelly, was the Australian light middleweight champ, the World Boxing Union's middleweight champ, and the Commonwealth light middleweight champion. Next on the list is Ellie Bennett. He was the Australian bantamweight and featherweight champion. Known for having a really exciting style. He'd keep his hands low and just throw hooks. Pretty much, he fought in the boxing tents way back when. I don't know what decade it was, but they said that had he had a little bit more of a defensive style, he could have been really great. It's just he was known for putting on a show, being very exciting, and well, I don't know how many years later it is, but I'm sitting here talking about him. Next on my list is Damien Super Hooper, who's current boxer, still boxing, and he represented Australia in the 2012 Olympics at light heavyweight, and he's still going. He recently won an Asian Pacific Championship. The last time I saw him fight, though, was when kickboxer Rob Powdrill just blasted him into unconsciousness. But he's come back from then, and he's doing great. The future looks bright for him. The next on my list, Rob Pedden, former IBF super featherweight champion. Just reading about him, he knocked out, I think his name was Nate Campbell, knocked him straight to sleep, and lost the title in his first defense against Antonio Barrera, I think. Next, Ron Richards, another old legend. He was the Australian middleweight, heavyweight, light heavyweight champ, and the British Empire, former British Empire, now Commonwealth middleweight champion. The next on my list that I've got here is Hector Thompson, former Australian light welterweight champ, 3-time Commonwealth light welterweight champ, and he challenged Roberto Duran for the WBA lightweight championship. Next I've got here is Reynold Quinlan, former IBO super middleweight champion. He actually probably more famous for knocking out Daniel Geale. Also next on the list is David Sands. He was the Australian middleweight, light heavyweight champ, and the British Empire middleweight champ. And if he hadn't tragically been killed in a truck accident when he was 26, they think that he would have gone on to become world champion. What happened was he was driving a truck. He had all of his brothers in the back of the truck. They were all boxers as well. And he crashed into a tree. He was coming back from work or going to work. Crashed into a tree. All the brothers in the back of the truck survived, but the cab was smashed and he died there. But they say he would have gone on to become a world champion. One of the greatest middleweights, light heavyweights, to never get even a crack at the title due to the unfortunate events. Of course, I've got to mention Lionel Rose, the first ever Indigenous world champion, when he won the bantamweight title off of Fighting Harada back in the 60s. There's not much I can say, that hasn't already been said, but the first ever world champ. Next on my list is Honest Frank Roberts. He was our first Indigenous Olympic boxer. Back in 1964. He fought in the Olympics at welterweight. I don't know how much success he had, but up until he passed away, he was training youth in boxing. So good on him. And the last one on my list in boxing is Jerry Jerome. And the reason I saved him till last was because he was the first ever Indigenous fighter to win the Australian Championship, which he done at middleweight. He won it in 1912, and when he retired, he had a record of 40 wins, 24 losses, with 34 knockouts. But the last name I want to bring up is, I think, is the first Indigenous fighter to ever fight in the UFC, and that's Tai Bam Bam Tuivasa. Currently holds a record of 7 wins, no losses. Those 7 wins all coming by knockout. Even though he's only had that short of a career, he's probably one of the more dangerous men in heavyweight. Probably with the next win over, when he wins over Arlovsky, I think he can make an argument for title contention. And Tuivasa also holds a record in boxing of 5 wins, 2 losses, and a 14-2 kickboxing record. But I thought, Reconciliation Week's coming. I'd like to do something. I'm not going to do another show. It's going to be too hectic at work. But this is my short tribute to Indigenous boxers and Tai Tuivasa over there in the UFC. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. I'm really hoping that this audio works out. I bought a microphone. Hopefully the camera work wasn't too shit. Anyway, also from that list, I'd like to just reiterate, fuck Anthony Mundine. He's the worst. Just, I hate him. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Anyway, thank you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching the Flaming Coq Podcast. I'm host Hayden Morris. Till next time, bye bye.